Molly saves the day. Chapter 2. We're in the army now. The next morning, every camper put on a red armband or a blue armband to show which team she was on. Right after breakfast, the red team left the dining hall with the flag. Molly and Susan watched Linda march down the path toward the red canoes with the rest of her team. They looked like an army parading two by two like soldiers, carrying their bags, lunches, and singing, "We are the Reds, the mighty, mighty Reds. Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are, so we tell them we are the Reds, the mighty, mighty Reds." Linda turned around and rolled her eyes at Molly. Molly grinned. She remembered that Linda had said last night what she had said last night about not taking color war too seriously. I should be more like Linda, Molly thought. But she snapped to attention when Dorinda said in her bossiest voice, "Blue Army, report to HQ on the double." HQ? Susan asked Molly. Who's that? It's not a person, it's a place, said Molly. HQ stands for headquarters. I think she means the boathouse. Let's go. Molly and Susan followed the rest of the Blue Army to the boathouse. Two girls stood as guards at the door in case the Red Army had left spies behind. When she got the signal that the coast was clear, Dorinda began. She frowned at the girls. "We are going to win this color war," she said sternly, "and the only way to win is to fight as hard as we can. Do you understand?" Everyone mumbled yes. "All right," Dorinda went on. "Here's the plan of attack. The flag is on Chocolate Drop Island. To get it, we obviously have to canoe across the lake. You will each be assigned a buddy. You and your buddy will paddle a canoe together. We will load up and begin the attack at 0900. 0900? Susan whispered to Molly. "Where's that?" "It's not a place, it's a time," said Molly. "It's the army way of saying 9 o'clock." "Well, why doesn't she just say 9 o'clock?" asked Susan. "We're a team, not really in the army." Molly put a finger to her lips. Dorinda was scowling at her and Susan. "Pay attention, troops," Dorinda ordered. She turned and uncovered a big map of Camp Gowanigan, tacked to the wall. Everyone said, "Ooh." The map looked as if it had been very carefully drawn. Molly realized Dorinda and her helpers must have been up all night making it. Molly's heart sank. Under Dorinda's command, color war seemed less and less like a game among friends and more like a war between enemies. The map showed the boathouse, the lake, and Chocolate Drop Island. Dorinda used a long stick to point to places on the map as she talked. "First," she pointed to the boathouse, "we will set out from here," she said, and she pointed to a place on the far side of Chocolate Drop Island, labeled Beach. "We will land here. From the beach, we will march up Chocolate Drop Hill. I will capture the flag. The rest of you will take the Red Army prisoner. You will lead the prisoners back to your canoes and return them to our HQ. I will meet you here no later than 1000. She means 10 o'clock, right? Susan asked Molly. But Molly wasn't listening to Susan. There was something else she didn't understand. It wasn't the plan. She understood the plan perfectly. The plan was easy. In fact, it was too easy, much too easy. Timidly, Molly raised her hand, and everyone turned around and stared at her. "Yes," snapped Dorinda. Molly stood up. She clasped her hands behind her back. I get the plan," she said. "I know what we're supposed to do, but I wonder what they're going to do. The Red Army, I mean. Won't they have scouts who will see us coming across the lake? The lake isn't very wide there." "How do you think we should cross the lake?" Dorinda asked sharply. "Should we swim underwater?" Molly's hands were clammy. Everyone at camp knew she hated to swim underwater. She wanted to sit down, but she made herself speak up. "I just think the Red Army will be waiting for us at the beach when we land. They'll be ready to take all of us prisoner. Isn't there any place we could land where they wouldn't see us?" "No," said Dorinda. "Those are my orders." "But," Molly started to say, "but what if—" Dorinda crossed her arms over her chest and said, "If you are too chicken to do this, then you can stay behind. Be a deserter. Otherwise, go with your friend Susan. The two of you can be buddies and bring up the rear in your canoe. That way, the rest of us can protect you." Molly sat down, shamed into quiet. She pretended to straighten her blue armband. "Now go to the canoes. The rest of the buddy assignments will be made there," said Dorinda. Everyone filed out of the boathouse. No one would look at Molly. Susan and Molly walked slowly over the last canoe on the shore. "How come we don't get lunches like the Red Army did?" asked Susan. "Won't we get hungry?" We shouldn't need lunches, said Molly. We're supposed to be back here by 10 o'clock, remember? Oh, yeah, said Susan. She looked longingly toward dining hall. Head out, they heard Dorinda yell. All the Blues cheered and waved their canoe paddles in the air. Molly pushed the canoe into the water, and she started to climb in the back. Wait, said Susan. I don't want to sit in the front. I'll get splashed by waves up there. Molly looked at the water. It was as flat as glass, but she said, Okay, you can sit in the back. Susan looked uncertain. No, she said. I don't want to sit in the back either. The back person does all the work. You know how bad I am at steering and everything. Hurry and make up your mind, Molly, said Molly. The other canoes are already halfway to the island. Okay, she said. I'll go in the front, but don't paddle too fast. The canoe wobbled from side to side as Susan climbed in. See, she squeaked, I always get the tippiest canoe. She inched her way to the seat in front, clutching the sides of the canoe with both hands. When she was seated, Molly handed her a paddle, shoved the canoe into deeper water, and climbed in the back. The other canoes were way ahead of them, strung out across the lake like a family of ducks. As she and Susan paddled closer to the island, Molly could see the Red Scout watching them from a high point on the island's shore. The scout turned and ran toward the back side of the island. She's going to the beach to warn everyone, Molly thought, with a sinking feeling. The whole entire Red Army will be waiting for us at the beach. They're going to put us in prison, I just know it. The rest of the blue canoes had already paddled around the back side of the island, out of Molly's sight. Come on, she said to Susan, we better catch up with the others. She dug her paddle deep into the water. Susan dug her paddle in too. Then she shrieked, My paddle! I dropped it! Molly saw Susan's paddle floating toward her. She put her own paddle in the bottom of the canoe and reached out with both hands to grab Susan's paddle. Susan was reaching too, leaning way over the side of the canoe. Don't, yelled Molly, but it was too late. Over went Susan. Over went the canoe. Over went Molly. Down, down into the water Molly sank. Down into the dark green depths. Molly struggled with all her strength, pulling one arm, grabbing onto her glasses with the other hand, kicking with her legs, wiggling and fighting her way up. Finally, her head popped into the sunshine. Molly coughed and choked on the water she had swallowed. She gasped for air. Over here, Molly heard Susan shout. She looked around. Susan was behind her, holding on to the canoe. Come on, Susan said. Grab the canoe. Molly swam towards Susan. She held her head up high out of the water. It felt odd swimming in her clothes. Her shoes felt like weights dragging her feet down. Molly kicked hard. The canoe was right side up, but it was half full of water. Her paddle floated in a big puddle. Molly held on to the canoe and tried to catch her breath. I'm so sorry, Susan wailed. Are you okay? What'll we do? Go to shore, said Molly in a shaky voice. I think I see a place to land. They were not far from the island. Both girls held onto the canoe with one arm and pushed through the water with the other arm. As they came to the shore, Molly saw a place where the water cut into the land. She and Susan pushed the canoe into the cut. It was narrow, not much wider than the canoe. They scrambled out of the water and sat on the rocks, panting. Molly was still trembling. Gosh, Susan whispered, I hope the red team doesn't catch us. Molly looked around. They were completely hidden by the high wall of rocky land on one side and tall pine trees on the other. I don't think anyone can see us here, she said. The scout is on the other side of those trees, and I think the rest of them are on the far side of the island on the beach. Probably no one knows about this little place to land, but we'd better not stay long. Let's bail out the canoe. Molly and Susan scooped water out of the canoe with their Camp Gawanigan hats. When there was still about 3 inches of water sloshing around the bottom of the canoe, Susan said, My arms are killing me. Can't we stop now? Okay, said Molly. Her arms hurt too. Let's go. Good, said Susan. I'm so hungry and I want to change my clothes. Oh, we can't go back to camp, said Molly firmly. We have to go on and find the rest of our army. Susan protested. But it's nearly lunchtime and I lost my paddle. I'll paddle, said Molly. She stood up wearily. Susan climbed back into the canoe. We're probably better off if we don't have a paddle, she said. We sure can't do any worse. Molly backed the canoe into the lake by pushing against the rocks in her paddle. Then slowly she paddled around the corner of the island until they could see the beach. Uh-oh, said Susan. All the blue canoes were dragged out of the water on one side of the beach, paddles stuck every which way. The canoes looked as helpless and tipped over turtles, waving their legs in the air. All the girls in the Blue Army were sitting behind canoes in a bushy corner of the beach. A big sign on one bush said prison. Look at that, said Susan. They've got our whole team in their prison, exactly like you said they would. Standing in front of the prison was a watchful guard with a big whistle on the lanyard. Around her neck, Molly squinted at the guard through her water-stained glasses. She gasped, "It's Linda! The guard is Linda!" Molly was surprised. She certainly had not expected Linda to have such an important job to do. "Oh, good," said Susan, relieved. "She can help us." Susan waved her arms above her head. "Woohoo, Linda, it's us!" she shouted. "Help!" "Susan, I don't know if—" Molly began. At that second, Linda looked straight at Susan and Molly. She put her whistle in her mouth and blew one shrill blast after another. She ran down to the water, swooping toward them like a hawk in attack, waving her arms wildly and pointing to their canoe. 5 or 6 girls with red armbands ran across the beach toward her. "They'll catch us!" cried Molly. "Let's get out of here." She paddled hard. Susan stuck her arms in the water and used her hands as paddles. Luckily, the canoe was pretty far out in the lake, and it scooted around to the other side of the island before the red canoes were even in the water. But Molly didn't stop paddling as hard as she could until she and Susan were all the way across the lake, safe at the boathouse. Silently, Molly and Susan hauled their canoe out of the water. It was the only canoe on the shore. The last blue canoe was free, and it looked lonely. Molly's shoulders were sore. Her hands hurt from gripping the paddle. Susan shook her head. "I just can't believe Linda would send them out and get us all like that," she said. "We're her friends." "I know," said Molly, "and Linda told us she wasn't going to take color war too seriously." "She must have changed her mind," said Susan. "She sure looked serious back there." "Yeah," said Molly. "She's as serious as Dorinda." Molly felt as if Linda had tricked her in some way. Last night, Linda had said this war would be fun. So far, it had not been very much fun for Molly, and that was for sure. "First, I practically drowned," she thought. "Then even worse, my best friend treats me like an enemy. I guess friendship doesn't count during a war." Molly and Susan trudged up the hill to their tent. Molly was thinking hard. "After we change clothes, maybe we can dig up some lunch," said Susan. She sounded cheerful. "First, we'd better dig up a plan," said Molly. She sounded serious.